It's time now to talk movies, and on the line is John Jarratt. John, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Hello.
Yeah, how you going?
Not too bad for an old bloke.
That's the way to be. Now, John, you've had a wonderful career. You've appeared in some great Australian movies. In fact, you've had the knack of appearing in some of the best ones, like Picnic and Hanging Rock and Odd Angry Shot. How did you get your start in movies?
Just like everyone else, mate. I turned up, I did the screen test, and they liked what they saw, and I got the gig. And
you've also appeared in some of the TV series, some of those, like so many actors got their grounding in TV series like Matlock Police and Bluey. What do you prefer, movies or TV?
Well, the Blueys and the Matlocks, they were kind of jobbing gigs, you know. They weren't terribly well written or anything else. They just put bread and butter on the table in the 70s, you know. But the TV I liked were the miniseries, you know. They used to make a lot of miniseries back then, like The Last Outlaw. I played Ned Kelly. That was one of the best things I've ever been involved in. And Fields of Fire, about the cane cutting. We did 1, 2, and 3 of those. And they were extraordinary television. I really enjoyed those. I Had a Cough and a Spit and Blue Heelers, which I think is the best piece of television ever made anywhere in the world. We make good TV.
Well, of course, you hit the big time internationally with your performance in Wolf Creek. And actually, Quentin Tarantino has described you as the best Australian actor. That's a great compliment, isn't it?
Yeah. You can't knock that back. I'll live with that.
Wolf Creek was a pretty frightening film.
No, I was quite happy. I thought I'd done the job. It was a horror film. I was the horror, and it was horrible. So it was, in all those respects, I was happy with it, very happy with it.
And it had a huge reaction around the world, didn't it?
Yeah, it still does. Yeah, it's a cult film like the Blues Brothers. It just keeps on keeping on.
Now, I've always thought that the studios spend really too much money on stars and special effects and that sort of thing, not enough on script and substance. Now, Wolf Creek really proved that you can be successful with a low budget.
Well, as most Australian films prove time and time again, yeah. You name the film, I'll tell you. It was a low-budget one. There's not many that were big-budget films and highly successful, you know, apart from, say, Snowy River and Croc Dundee. I suppose they had a few bob, but most of our films are kicking and scratching films.
Well, after the success of Wolf Creek, did you get swamped by all those Hollywood studio executives? No,
I didn't. I went over to LA because they said you should go over there and become a millionaire and time your life and all that sort of stuff. But to be successful in Hollywood, after you make a film like Wolf Creek, you've got to go live there for 2 years. And quite frankly, I'd rather put needles in my eyes than to live in LA. So I came home and I formed my own production company, and I used my notoriety from Wolf Creek to start making my own films. I made Savages Crossing, and we're going to continue to make films.
And what's it like getting distribution with new films in Australia?
Oh, it's very difficult because it's hard to get distributors on board with Aussie films because basically we're just a feeding ground for Hollywood movies, and they turn up pre-packaged with all the posters and all the media and the marketing. It's all there in one big fat parcel. So the Australian distributors and exhibitors don't have to think too much. But if you take on an Aussie film, it's an independent film, and you've got to do a lot of work. And then if it's not successful, well, it's not good for them. And unfortunately, we've made far too many bad films in the last 10, 15 years, and so we've been our own worst enemies. So can't blame them altogether, but you can blame them to a certain extent to take more of a punt in Australian film, you know, back their own, and we got to back ourselves to make better, more watchable commercial movies.
Well, we've got the Gold Coast Film Festival coming up, and that's starting on the 10th of November, and that's going to be showcasing some of the great local films, including a new one that you're involved with, Bad Behaviour. Tell us about that.
Well, it's a bit of a thriller horror film. It's about a young man and a young woman who go on a killing rampage, and fortunately I play the hero in this rather than the horror, so that was a good thing to be able to do inside a scary film without being the scary guy.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing about your career. You've been very versatile with lots of diverse roles. Must be good to be able to play all these different characters.
I've been fairly well blessed, you know, to be able to have done so many varied characters in the last 36 years, and working on films and miniseries, etc., and so on. I've got nothing to complain about, and I don't go seeking roles. I just wait for someone to ask me to do something, and if it's interesting and the script's good, I'll do it.
And what have you got coming up in the near future?
In a fortnight, I'm going to do my first American film. I'm going to Portland in Oregon to make this film called Shiver, which is a bit of a horror film. I'm playing this nerdy, buck-toothed, middle American serial killer with slightly buck-toothed and kind of talks like that, like that kind of guy. Yeah, that's who I'm doing.
So you're going to have to do the American accent.
I hope so, unless that was a really bad Australian accent you just heard there.
That was pretty good. No, it sounded good, yeah.
Well, the accents are okay. Most Aussie actors can do them, but the Americans can't do ours. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make that what you will. And then in the new year, I'm going to play Cliff Young, the guy who ran from Sydney to Melbourne in the ultra marathon, the old fella.
Yeah, the guy who shuffled from Sydney.
The Cliffy Shuffle, yeah, and that's called Back of Nowhere. And then we're doing Wolf Creek 2 in the middle of next year somewhere.
Well, that'll be interesting.
I got a bit on.
Yeah, a sequel to Wolf Creek. That'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it's very good. I read the script. It's fantastic.
Well, John, you're going to be at the Gold Coast Film Festival, I understand, for the screening of Bad Behaviour.
I'm going to be there on the premiere night, and Bad Behaviour screens on Saturday night for all of you guys out there who want to go and see a really good film.
And you'll be talking about the film, I understand, at a question and answer session. Is that right?
A bit of a Q&A at the end of it, yeah, I believe. So, yeah, come along and join us and have a bit of fun. Watch a good Aussie movie. You won't be bored, I can guarantee that.
Well, that sounds good. Well, John, thanks very much for joining us, and we wish you every success with the new film Bad Behaviour and also with the sequel to Wolf Creek.
Thank you, and thanks so much for your support.
It's a pleasure. That's John Jarratt on Jazz Radio 94.1 FM talking about his latest movie, Bad Behaviour.